Like if you don't want to do it, that's completely your business decision, but you're going to sign this declination of recommendation form because when you decide
declination.
So when you decide to throw us under the bus, we're going to make sure that we can crawl out from under the bus,
wave a piece of paper,
as we throw you under the bus.
Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right. Protect your patience. Day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right.
So today, Donna, we're going to be talking about keeping it boring. And I don't know about you, but the older I get, the more I appreciate keeping things boring.
I'm sure you do. You're getting all of those grandkids now, and you don't need any more excitement, do you?
Yeah, I mean, even in business, like
there's that.
The boring businesses are the ones you want because, they make money and there's not a lot of excitement, meaning there's not a lot of probably churn in customers and complaints and everything. It's just sometimes there's a lot to say about boring.
Yep.
And we'll be talking about that today. We're going to talk about why keeping things boring and patched matters a lot. But before we do want to talk about something that is not boring, which is
it is not
2025 Pri-Set Boot Camp. It would be anything but boring. We promise you that. We're going to spend 4 days in May sitting together talking about all the crazy things that people do and how we can defend against it.
We hold hands and sing Kumbaya. It's there's so much happening right now. And so many people are like, well, what do I do about this? And what do I do? You know what you need to worry about right now? The only thing you should really be worrying about is protecting your stuff. Because they know that we're worried about a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And they're using that against us.
Yep. Protect your junk.
Yeah. So knowing what to do and to stay ahead of the curve, so to speak, making sure you're doing now everything that puts you in the place you need to be prepared not only for these attacks, but to be able to prove that you're doing all the things that are reasonable and appropriate and should be expected of you.
Yeah, because even if you're doing everything, there still is a chance that you'll become a victim. And if you are, you still need to provide proof that you were doing everything you're supposed to be doing. And that's from the standpoint of insurance, because they might not cover you if you weren't doing certain things. Or if you have to talk to a lawyer or you're doing certain things because people might want to sue you because of it. If you have a regulators come in and they're doing an investigation, what can you prove? And it's really all about what you can prove. What kind of documentation do you have? What were you doing? Calling me after the fact is not going to help you a whole lot. Call me before you have a problem.
Well, yeah, and having one person that knows everything that everybody's going to go to is not going to solve it either.
Yeah.
Because they go on vacation, they get sick. Well, I hope you let them go on vacation and get sick and not have to try to work because I have made mistakes when I'm trying to work sick. You need to have multiple people on your team that understand what's going on and how to make sure you're doing everything that you can. So that's what we're doing at the boot camp. Y'all come on down now, you hear?
Yep. It'll be May 13th through 16th at the Evergreen Resort Conference Center in Stone Mountain, Georgia. If you want to learn more, go to prisecbootcamp.com. And I think our early bird special is about to wrap up, so better act quick.
Yeah, there's delays in everything these days. So I don't know that we're not. People are like, it's taking forever to get approvals. I wonder why.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
Because we know.
So let's talk about keeping it boring and patch. And so this week, actually, I guess it was the end of last week, you attended the National HIPAA Summit. And unfortunately, I was not able to do any of that because I was at a different conference. But what are some of the things? I know you can't share everything, but what are some of the things that kind of came out of that grabbed your attention?
Well, the sessions are pre-recorded for the most part. I don't think anything is live, and unlike it used to be, so you don't get the same fun that I used to get.
No gasps.
Where it's like, I don't know what this slide means. Or I'm doing this and somebody else normally does it. It's just, you never know. So I do miss that part of it. But there are so many good sessions, and I can watch all the ones that are being released on the schedule and then go back and watch all the ones that I couldn't watch because I was in another one. So I'm really excited about being able to do that. And there are so many discussions, and it's like, for some reason, in almost every discussion, AI came up. I don't know why.
I don't either. Yeah.
It was just crazy. And I have handouts and stuff going back to the 2013 HIPAA Summit. I never had to really go to these things and get that engaged until I decided to do that part of the business. And it is so different when I look at it. Was like a day and a half back then. And it's like our boot camp, it's like, now it's like they have pre-conference sessions, and then they do the whole, it's 4 full days, and that's what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have the HHS folks were on, but there were also some really interesting sessions about real world stories, so to speak. And those are the ones that I'm looking at and getting into some reports. But the emphasis on don't let your guard down is huge. And yes, well, no one wanted to make any predictions about where we're going. But everyone knows, where we're going, regulatory, all of that. But everyone knows we still have to protect ourselves and prove we're doing it properly. And that's the focus. And that's the focus we're having, because you can't sit around worrying about all of this. You're worrying about the wrong thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in a different kind of topic, I was reading an article about the CEO of Perplexity AI. And a lot of people use Perplexity. I use it. As a matter of fact, it's my search engine now. And somebody asked him, in fact, I know the lady who asked him the question. I met her this past weekend, and she asked the question, what do you see happening over the next 1 to 3 years? And his answer, and I'm paraphrasing, but his answer was basically, right now we're living like quarter to quarter because AI is moving so fast. I can't even tell you a year or 3 years out. Like, that's not even relevant to the conversation right now.
Yeah, there you go. There's so many reasons to plan right now, because that's all we can think about is what's happening in the next quarter to quarter, 90 days at a time, and that's the way I've been trying to do it.
Yeah,
and I didn't really realize, but that probably has a lot to do with it. They were asking me about, we did last year an AI webinar explaining, we did a session that kind of gives you the basics of what AI is and generative AI and what's the difference in that. And then we do a whole 2 hours on how do you actually integrate that? How do you manage it, and some governance and all that, which we talked about in the last episode, the need for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my team was like, should we, publish that again and let people go, sign up for it? And I was like, I'm not sure it's even accurate in any way.
I did a presentation. You'll love this. I did a presentation last Wednesday on AI, and I opened with, I have a 30-minute time slot to talk about AI. Let's move quickly before it changes.
I know. That's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, I had to talk about AI last week at a presentation, and it was like, what I'm telling you right now is what it is right now. But tomorrow, they're like, well, what do you use? What do you like? And I'm like, well, I use this right now, but tomorrow I might use different.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna they all do different jobs really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And last week, OpenAI rolled out this whole new image generation for their image generation software, as well as Sora and for video. And I mean, just everything changed last week because of that. And in fact, so many people were generating images because it's so good now that OpenAI had to put limitations on how many times you can run it in an hour because they were getting bombarded with that. So it's just, I mean, it's crazy. And that's just one AI. I haven't even told you about the other AI platform that I got accepted into because you have to apply to get into it.
Ah. Which one is this?
It's
talk
called
later.
It's called Manus, which is one of the Chinese ones. So I haven't logged into it and tried it, but it's supposed to be one of these super secret ones, whatever. But I've got this. I got a version of Linux I need to install first called Cubes. I don't know if you ever heard of that one, but it segments every single window you're running from everything else. So even if you do something crazy in your browser, the browser can't talk to any other window or part of the operating system that's open. So there's no way possible it can jump across to anything else.
Never say no way possible, David.
There's no way possible. So we better
get back to where we were.
Until tomorrow.
It's never until tomorrow. Hey, right now, it's not possible. Right this minute. Okay, now it could be. But yeah. So, but back to what we were talking about. You know, the sessions that I was on, I mean, it's all fairly current because they don't record them like 3 months ago. They record them, within a couple of weeks. So the one I wanted to go over right now and touch on just a few things. And then I have this article that seemed really appropriate for what we were talking about. But it was Tim Noonan, who is, I don't know, he's director of something, maybe privacy and security. I don't know. But he's often the guy that's always going to be there to explain stuff to you. He's been around. He was here in the Southeast region for a long time. Then he's been up in DC for a long time. And so he did the session on what's going on. Normally it's the director, but we don't have one. Normally don't have one at this point in a new administration anyway. So he was giving us an update where they were. And there were a few things in his points that I wanted to make sure I covered. And one was the audits, they did get started in December. We kind of heard that was happening. Mm-hmm. And overall, a lot of folks were really saying that what we need is more audits. They need to do more audits rather than more enforcement. And I like the message, but if you're just doing the audits, we know that there's a lot of these smaller groups. If they're not getting audited, they don't care. And you're not going to get their attention by saying, look, we audited a whole bunch of people. So I am concerned about that. But I do also, on the flip side, think it is a better way. So they have selected 50 organizations, some CEs and some BAs. And if you are lucky enough to be one of those,
congratulations.
Yeah, just know that you're getting free consulting.
Yeah, really.
It's really what you're doing is getting free consulting because unless they find something just really horrible, just egregious failure, they're not even going to turn to enforcement usually, and probably not at all right now in the chaos. But he said that they were, how did he phrase it here? The audit is looking at selected provisions of the security rule most relevant to hacking and ransomware attacks.
Oh, there's where you should be focusing then. How can you prevent hacking and ransomware attacks?
Well, that would be the security rule. But so he did say, and hopefully I've got the quote in correctly. These audits will give us an opportunity to examine the mechanisms for compliance and discover risk and vulnerabilities that they maybe didn't see in enforcement, and that, the auditees will be the lucky folks, will get an assessment of how they're doing, and it'll help them improve their cybersecurity. I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
But he was doing some tips, and you could send in questions, and they would ask him the questions and record the answers. So you did get an opportunity to send in questions up until like a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things was about, what advice for somebody, audit, investigation, whatever's going on. And he said the most important thing you could do is make our work that we're doing on your case boring.
Yep.
Just be bored. If there's nothing that is alarming or exciting or terrifying, I'm sure they see sometimes, but if they're bored with what they're seeing, that's what your goal is. So there you go. We need to come up with some sort of tagline. We're here to help you be boring.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And again, the good news is I can go back and I can check these, but that's better than the live one. But I don't recall him mentioning anything because, the amendment for recognized security practices says one of the things is if you can prove you've been following them for the last 12 months, then basically the audit's supposed to be over. It's just done. That should be enough. So I don't know. I'm going to go back and read it, but it is what it says. And I'm sure if you are one of those and you do have that proof, make sure you bring it up. And I guess they would be asking about it. I haven't looked. I think that somebody's published what the questions are or some idea of them. Anyway, but I thought that was really, really interesting. He did talk about the NPRM for the security rule changes and went through them and discussed them. And yes, there's a lot of them. And I don't expect that if it does get enacted at all, any of it, that it's going to be the way it's originally written. And I know why things are there. I know some things are there that shouldn't be there.
It's like anything else. You ask for crazy stuff just so you gives you a bargaining chip on the other stuff.
I know, something like that. I know that there are things they wanted to put in that you would never be able to enforce. Let's just say I know things. But anyway, he said they had received about 4,745 comments. About 4,745 comments. And he said, we will read every single one of them and take into account what's being said. That's going to take a while.
Yeah.
And this all was said before the announcement of that they're cutting 10,000 people from HHS. So, we're not going to get anything done. And we're on our own. And that's why HSCC, the Health Sector Coordinating Council Cybersecurity Working Group, I wish we could come up with some other shorter way of putting it. Anyway, I didn't like 405D. Now I like 405D better. But, that where we have to do the public-private partnership stuff with HHS. We don't have that right now. And hopefully that'll come back soon. But in the meantime, we're still doing our work. I mean, I'm doing like 2 meetings a week on the different projects, and there's some others that are about to start ramping up. So there'll be additional meetings, and additional task groups are spinning up to work with some very specific topics. And so there's a lot out there that's happening in our world. We're doing the work. We haven't stopped. And that's basically what that whole sense is do everything you can to maintain and protect yourself and move forward with your defenses. If you're doing what you did last week and it's working, don't assume it'll work next month. It's the same thing because of the AI and so many other things are impacting it. So while we see whatever they decide if in their playbook for the season, if they write one, who knows? We still have the problems.
Yeah.
And that was really how we all were looking at it, how everybody was looking at it.
To your point, is the legislation part is irrelevant. Like, you should be doing privacy and security regardless. You shouldn't need regulation to enforce that upon you. Do it anyway.
Yeah. And I think that's our message. That has been our message for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're only worried about compliance with a regulation, you're not actually securing your business and protecting your patients or your clients or whatever data you have. So you need to continue what we've been telling you to do. That's it. Just do what we tell you to do. That's not changing. And at some point, we'll know other things of what's going to happen. But at this point, focus on protecting your business, because it's scary out there, folks. And if you got to keep your eye on the ball, David, or you'll end up behind the 8 ball.
Okay.
Nobody wants to play hard mode. It's too many metaphors. I'm throwing too many metaphors in.
Yeah, jumping from one sport to the other.
I don't regret it. Yeah, I know. Switching. And, when I wrote it, I was like, I think that'll work. And then I read it, and then, no, it's not really working. But, we are in full contact. We're playing in full pads. I'm just going, it's wrong no matter what I do here. But full speed every day. You're in a full contact sport. If you're a sports metaphor, and if you like some others, you're racing at full speed against others. It's just the ones you're racing with. Those are the ones that are going to try to run you off the road. And if you're not prepared and taking care of things, it's not going to really matter about regulations. You can check all the boxes you want. It's not going to really matter. So I'm going to go back. There's some reports, some studies that folks did, and they reviewed the details, and I'd read the reports, but I want to hear, the conversation they had about them. And there's a couple of ones that are really interesting, and it was just, you get exhausted going to these things. So then I'm afraid I fell asleep or something. I did kind of nod off, but you can't help yourself. But that
you had an out-of-body experience.
Well, let's just say all the sessions are not conducted by people that are energetic and engaging.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Anyway, I have to have room. I was doing one last week, and I sprinted across the room as part of my. I don't know why I felt like, stuff just comes to me. Anyway, so let's, this is the segue about why you cannot let your guard down. And I read this article, and it came out recently. So we're getting, we always get the information well after the fact it happened. Mm-hmm. As we should. You don't want to hear about all the details of what's going on in an active attack. That's not good. That should not be public. But, down the road, let's know. And so there was this article that said, this is the FBI. Open up. China's Volt Typhoon is on your network. And that was and I was like, wait, what? Can you imagine getting that call? Boom, boom, boom. It's the FBI. Open up. Chinese are in your network.
Yeah, well, we'll get to it in a second, but I think I would have had the same reaction.
I know, right? It's a great article. You need to come link to it just to read the guys. I would love to just have this guy to tell this story himself, because I bet it's a hoot. But this is the quote, and that really granted, the title got me. So I was in. And then I hear, see this part. We don't have any access to large critical infrastructure. Okay. So he's part of the critical infrastructure. We don't own transmissions. We're a distribution company. Yes, we're part of the overall grid. That's the point. But the impact of taking out Littleton, which is the name of their company, is small. And then he says, you would never think that that would be a target of any type of attack.
Wrong.
Wrong. And he does. He gets a call. The FBI calls him up and says, hey, the Chinese are in. I'm so-and-so from the FBI. We want to put our sensors on there and monitor what they're doing. We don't want to get rid of them. We just want to monitor what you're doing. And this is the part you can share this because you did bring it up.
So this is quoting him. He's like, "Go F yourself. I'm not going to click on the link. You must think I'm an idiot." What is your name again?
And he was like, and he picks it up and he calls and he asks for the guy. So he still gets the guy, but he's like, "No, I still am not going to load anything. No." And if it's really a thing, then you and your people will be here on Monday morning because I got things to do this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I would do. We've joked about this before about, if the FBI was to call me, I'd be like, yeah, right, whatever. I'm not doing that. Even if it is, like, you're going to have to do something different because I'm not going for any kind of phone calls. I'm not going for any kind of emails. You better show up on my doorstep.
Yeah, and certainly not clicking a link that you're going to email me, right now. And I'm going to call and tell you, yeah, that's the oldest trick in the social engineering book. Not to say that book is old, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, and so then he's like, he pretty much forgot about it over the weekend, comes into work and they're like, some people from the government are here to see you.
He's like, well, hobby dog.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure that was just a very calm, wonder what they want kind of thing. But yeah, and they explained to him what's going on and that these folks are in his network and they've found him. And they did have some sensors go off to say, some stuff looks weird. Mm-hmm. But what they wanted was to monitor what they were doing within the network and basically how are they using you?
Right.
What are they doing with you and investigating so that they could figure out what was going on? And I love it. He's like, they gave me a pamphlet. It's kind of like you've gone to the doctor and you have this severe condition. There's a pamphlet for it, And they were like, "Oh, have a good Christmas."
Yeah, okay.
Like, you just gave me this, and you think no. But then it goes into how they got in, David. And I know you are thrilled to tell this part of the story.
Oh yeah. So they gained their initial access through FortiGate 300D firewall. Now, if you follow anything about FortiGate and Fortinet and all those, they've had a lot of problems lately with CVEs that have been coming out left and right. And
okay, so back up. Wait. So basically, they're having security flaws in their software. That's what he means when he says CVEs.
Yes.
So that is a vulnerability that has been identified, and often it's actually under attack. And this has been going on for some time. We're not talking like this goes back 2-3 years that this has been going on. So sorry, just need to clarify that because that was a technical conversation there for a minute.
Yeah. So according to Lawler, the Fortinet they patched the wall. Fortinet came out with the patch in December 22. But as of August of 23, the MSP for this electric light company had not patched the software. Now, they fired the guy. They fired the MSP. I say the guy, company, whatever. We don't know. But I have lots of questions because when I look it up, the Fortinet 300Z was actually hitting end of life in October of 23. So, So now that doesn't explain why it wasn't patched, because it should have been. But there probably also should have been some conversations around replacing this hardware that was about to go end of life. I mean, it was 2 months away from end of life.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the one where, and I need to go back and look at that. There was a case where the CEO comes out and blames the MSP, and the MSP is like, no. You didn't do what we told you to do. And they were actually suing each other. And I need to go back and see what's the status of those cases. So you don't know the other side of the story, so I can't just flat out blame the MSP. But you and I both know that often we'll have MSPs that have active contracts, and they never update the firewalls.
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way. It could be that the MSP didn't do what they were supposed to be doing, or it could be that the MSP brought this up to the client, and the client was like, I'm not worried about it. We're too small to be a target for attack.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend the money on that right now.
Yeah, so it's hard to know, but this is also why we have clients sign something. Like if you don't want to do it, that's completely your business decision, but you're going to sign this declination of recommendation form. Because when you decide so when you decide to throw us under the bus, we're going to make sure that we can crawl out from under the bus,
wave a piece of paper,
as we throw you under the bus.
And the fun begins there.
It does.
So, and so there's a lot of layers here to really think through. It's a really short story. I mean, you could read the whole thing in a couple of minutes because they don't go into a ton of details. But they do point out that, it was making him a nervous wreck, and it would have me too. They're like, well, leave them in there. Why would I want to do that?
Let's watch them crawl around your network and see what they're doing.
Oh, it's rough. It's horrible. So, but they had all the sensors that they had, but then the FBI put some stuff on there so they could monitor them in the background, and that's how you've infiltrated the network, so to speak, of the network they've infiltrated, and they don't know that you're watching them, that you've put somebody on the inside.
So, how did the FBI even get involved? Do you know that piece of it?
Well, it's a pretty big operation that was across the board targeting the utility grid and the electrical grid. It was news back then that they had detected that something was going on. Too many sensors were going off. Too many things were being triggered. And that's another reason that you do notify law enforcement when you have an attack, because they can notice then if there's a trend that they can then go look for and track these things. So, there's probably a detailed story that goes into everything about the Volt Typhoon, the Chinese attack, and what was involved. But they were actively trying to bring down our electrical grid and planning a major attack. They weren't actually, they were planning the attack. That's why they wanted to watch them to see what they were planning on doing. Because if you can't figure out what they're planning on doing, you don't know. They may have found something you don't know about. So that's what it was all. You don't know what you don't know. That's why you watch them.
Here's another scary thought. What if they would have pulled that firewall out and then somehow that firewall made itself, available on eBay, and then another organization picks it up and plugs it in,
it'll just be open again. But it was like the CEO or the president said, we had a little bitty hole, and they can find them. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
And it's funny, they call those pinholes when you're opening up holes, and they call them a pinhole. And that is the extent is that you have a tent, and that is something we should do. You have a tent, a huge tent. It's protecting you. It's pouring rain. And then somebody, right in the point, they notice that it's sagging. And they go and they just poke a little hole in it right there. Just there. Ching.
That's why you do pen
testing. It's not going to take long. I knew you were going with me. Yay. It's a pinhole pen testing. All of that works out. But they were, doing the whole living off the land. They got in and they didn't run anything fancy. They used tools that were already there. But they were legitimate everything. And, all of the things are not going to, until it looks odd, hey, why is somebody doing that? And it's a normal thing to do. So, just sit down and watch and see what they're doing. It's like those movies where they've got the hotel room rigged up, and then they get the bad guys to go in there and do their plan, and they got all of this stuff. Back in the 80s, you saw that a lot.
Yeah.
Really. So, the big thing here, you've got the company thinking, oh, we don't have anything to worry about. So that right then, if you've got that attitude, and it's not like it has to be in a malicious, obnoxious kind of way. It's just the culture is built that way, if that's what you believe.
Well, the first part of his quote, like, we don't have any access to large critical infrastructure. That is the same thing as saying we don't have anything anybody wants.
Yep.
And then, we don't own transmission. We're a distribution company. Again, we're too small. You'd never think that we'd be target of any type of attack. I mean, we hear the same thing from all small businesses that have this mindset.
Yeah, I mean, they were using them for espionage and also to learn how the system was transmitting things, and they could monitor all kinds of things from there. So they were learning things, and they were using all of these routers as a bot farm, so that they were building this up to get this attack and trying to figure out where the weak points were. So even if you see, this is the thing, they are part of the critical infrastructure. And I think that's another key element is you think you're not part of the critical infrastructure. You are part of the critical infrastructure. If you're connected to it, you're part of it.
Yep.
And, it's every supply chain.
Yeah.
Every part of it.
That's like I tell people all the time when they talk to me, what kind of company do you have? I say, we have a healthcare company that provides IT services, because that's what we are. We're in healthcare.
Yeah.
I am all up in every client's business because everything I have touches everything they have. Do. I mean, part of what I do is to be fully integrated into their electronic systems. And so, I don't want to look at myself as being in a technical business. I'm in a healthcare business.
And it keeps the focus that ultimately we're all responsible for patient safety and patient care.
Yep.
And that is still a big picture thing. And if you look at this story, it parallels all of the things that concern us. Certainly not in any sort of arrogant attitude, just not understanding how important every connection is today. And, it is important to understand how interconnected everything is. And that then lets you know that you are a tiny piece of the puzzle. But if you're not in there, there's a gaping hole. So you are part of the infrastructure. You're built into it. So that's a key element. And regardless of your size, you're connected.
When it comes to size, though, it's not that you're too small to be a target. To me, it's that you are a target because you are small. It is it is much easier for me to target a small company that may be connected to a larger company if I want to run upstream. That's the easiest way for me to do it. Why would I want to attack a big company when I can get into the small company and then pivot? So you're more likely to get hit if you're a small company.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, that is often their way in. You're right. Every time you hear that, you should be thinking, oh, you're the way in. You're going to be the way in.
Yeah, I mean, watch any of these movies, Ocean's 11 or whatever. I mean, you always go in and you dress up like the company that's working on the elevator, or you dress up like the chef or cooking crew or whatever. You always go into
a cater waiter.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're always coming in as the vendor who already has a foothold inside the organization. You don't try to break in directly.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they're always researching who's got the contract for stuff. And it's no different. It really is from that perspective. The difference is, I can't be a cater waiter from China here, in Pennsylvania, but I can get into a network, and by the way, we'll do everything. We won't set off any of your nighttime triggers, but all of our traffic will happen while nothing else is happening. Because, after hours.
Yep.
But for the big picture, you're still connected. And that's the I'm too small argument is just...
It's out.
And particularly those that are direct patient care. Because if yes, you're small... And maybe you don't treat a lot of patients, but what will your patients think if you're just gone all of a sudden? Or you're gone for weeks? And these things last for a long time and people don't get it. So unless you're just saying, screw it, I'm just going to keep going and leave them in there.
Yeah.
Which I got a whole nother list of concerns. But
the other point to make is that, MSPs, they're not, just because you have one doesn't mean that you're not going to have a problem.
Yes, which gets back to our constant discussions about supply chain. It's the trust but verify.
Right.
You should get reports from your MSPs on a regular basis that show what they're keeping up with. That's what we have a whole new thing that we call our responsibility matrix that looks at all of the different parts of managing your technical infrastructure. And down to the software and who is that and who's responsible for all of the different pieces and parts that requires. Because it's not like, okay, David's going to be responsible for every single thing on the network. No, you're not going to be. And maybe you sell them the firewall independently, not you. It's not the way you work, but some people will sell you the firewall and then you get a contract with the vendor and that's it. And the vendors automate. So when you get then this invoice that says, hey, your contract's up, and then you just try to not pay it, which is what most people do because they have no idea what it is. And then they don't stay on that contract and they don't go ask anybody, or they get the notice, hey, this is going to be end of life soon. And they're like, it's working.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke. And so you got that. So you need to have regular reporting on who's taking care of things. If you think they're taking care of it, you should get them to tell you, confirm that they are.
Yeah.
So somewhere. And that's why we also recommend checking the firmware. And that's part of your inventory so that you know what it is. I mean, no, these are not real exciting, sexy things, but you don't want to be in the news because you're got the Chinese all up in there either.
Yeah. Well, this is another reason why we come in and replace, for example, firewalls. Like we have a very specific set of firewalls we use because we want our people to deeply understand that brand. We also don't want to try to track all the firmware upgrades for 50 different firewall vendors. And so having that one we know and we know inside and out, it helps us and it helps our clients. And so we just replace it. That's something that if you don't understand that and you're like, hey, Mr. MSP that we just hired, we bought this firewall a year ago and you're telling me we need to replace it. That's why they're doing that. And it is in your best interest that you do that.
Yeah, almost always. But this is what we're talking about here, though. Is I love the fact that he didn't get social engineered by the FBI.
Yeah,
That was a good thing.
it was good.
I'm all about that. That was great. I mean, he knew and he didn't. But the understanding that you should be asking these questions, you should be monitoring to make sure these things are happening. You don't have to know how to do it. You just need to see that somebody says they're doing it, and that they give you some sort of confirmation. Now, there has to be that trust. You know, if somebody's giving you confirmation they're doing something, you got to trust that it's legit. Too legit to quit. I think it is time to quit. Yeah, I think we've made our point.
Yeah. Yep. So, just again, I would say, you know, when it comes to the tools and stuff, obviously the MSP was in place. They didn't catch whatever was happening for whatever reason, probably because
they did say that some of their sensors went off showing something was unusual, but nothing serious.
Yeah. But, you know, living off the land techniques, I mean, this stuff's hard, man. It's hard. It's not, again, not just because you hire some MSP that you're not going to be a target or that things like this aren't going to happen. They can, but you're definitely better protected than you were if you don't have one. So anyway, I think we covered every angle we possibly could on that one. So
yeah. I think we're done with that.
Yeah, we are done. So thanks for listening today. We appreciate it. Join us again next week. And remember, for Donna and myself, the HIPAA's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.